Miyuki Delica Beads. And then we're going to learn how to close them up into a ring shape. And we'll talk a little bit about how to measure, and then we'll talk about patterns, both following a pattern and creating your own pattern. So I'm giving everyone else just a few minutes to join, and while we're waiting, if you guys want to say where you're from in the chat. And then I'm also seeing that our handout has been posted. So if you didn't already get an email with this one, you can download it from the chat, which has step-by-step and 2 patterns available at the end. All right, I'm seeing where everybody's from here. We've got Toronto and Texas, Chicago, San Diego, Phoenix. Oh, hey, hi, Renee. I see Renee from Redmond there. San Diego, Delaware, Cali, South Carolina. Great. All right, well, so we've got a big group, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. And so just, I'm gonna reintroduce the project one more time, just for everyone who's joining late. There is a handout in the chat, and it has a step-by-step instructions for everything we're gonna do today. And it also has patterns at the end. And what we're gonna learn how to do is start peyote stitch, how to build it, how to follow a pattern if you're following it. And that reminds me, I wanted to say, so for beginners, I would recommend making a solid colored ring for the first time if you've not done peyote stitch before. Just focus on learning the stitch and learning the measurements, and then attempt a pattern with your next ring. But if you've done peyote stitch before and you want to try a pattern, we're going to walk through the chevron one because it's a pretty easy one to follow. And then at the end, if we get time, I was going to talk about making your own patterns. All right, so if everyone's ready, I'm going to switch cameras and get started. Okay. That focus there. So these are 2 samples that I have ready to go to show you how to add thread and to show how to close them. And I figure we'll demo that at least 2 times. But I'm going to start a brand new one. And I'm using Nymo thread. It's size D. And so for a ring that is, you know, anywhere between 5 and a size 9, you probably need about 36 inches of working thread. So I'm pulling about that much now. And in the last class, we talked about the bead mats. If you're using one of the bead mats, they are exactly 12 inches in length, so you can use them to measure. And so these are precision scissors. And so with this thread, the best way to thread the needle, it doesn't flatten like the thread we've been using in some of the other classes. But what you can do with this thread is you can either moisten it or just thread it right when it's cut from the spool, and it goes a little easier. All right. So we'll talk for just a second about patterns. So in the handout, there is a word chart. And we're going to start with the word chart and build from that. But like I said before, if you're a beginner, go ahead and just choose a color you like and just string 10 of them and just keep working with that same color. So rows 1 and 2 in peyote stitch, you always build the first 2 rows at the same time, and then each row after that is built like it fits in like little bricks. So you have these little stacking pattern. So I'll show you getting started with that. And I think I'll use green, it's a little easier to see. So there's my color A. And for color B, I'm going to use this really pretty blue. There's color B. All right. And so picking up 10 color A's is the first step. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pick up 10 beads here. And the best way to do that is to just go ahead and use your bead mat. And I'm gonna slide these to the end of the thread. Leave enough tail to weave in. It doesn't have to be a lot, maybe 6 inches or so. And 10, okay. All right, so I've got 10 on there. The next step is pick up the first bead of row 3. So for this is an easy pattern, so the first is just another A. So the first of row 3, picking up 1A. So what you want to do is skip the last bead you added and go into the bead above that, just that single bead there. And bring that through. And when you pull tight, what I like to do is I take the tail thread and the working thread and pull on them together. And what you'll see happen is those will sit next to each other, one on top of the other. I'm gonna see if I can zoom in just a little more for you guys. So you can see there, it just kind of popped right into place just by pulling that working thread and the tail thread apart from each other. So I'm going to repeat what I just did. I'm picking up another color A, skip a bead, and go through the next bead. And then just pull. Again, pulling the tail thread and the working thread apart. And I'm trying to get that to sit flat so you guys can see that now it looks like how they're stacking. And that's exactly what we want. These are called the up beads, and these are the down beads. So picking up another A, skipping a bead, and going through the next one. Pulling apart the working thread and the tail, they snap right into place. Picking up another A. And one more. So each row, after rows 1 and 2, each row in this pattern is going to add 5 beads. So what you're seeing here is finished rows 1, 2, and 3. And so I'm going to go ahead and add row 4, which is 5A. So I'm going to pick up one size A seed bead, or sorry, color A seed bead, string that, through here, and turn. So does everyone see what we did here? We were exiting from this bead, and then we turned and went through the first up bead in the row. So this is how we're starting row 4. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat this once again. I'm just going to go through the rest of row 4, and then I'll show you guys step by step from the beginning one more time. But so just finishing row 4 really quickly, which in our pattern is all the same color again. So going into the next up bead. Oops, sorry about that. And you'll see it's pretty forgiving. Even if it gets a little wonky, you just tighten it up and it'll go right back to being in a good spot again. Another tip for when you're working with this thread, this is a really delicate thread. Try not to pierce it when you're doing your next stitch. So see, I've added a bead here and I'm about to go into this next bead, but this thread here is exiting and it's really close. It's very easy to puncture it. When you do that, the bead won't snap into place. It'll get stuck and you'll have to pull your needle off of the thread and unstick it. So I'm always kind of careful. Sometimes I pick it up, turn it to the side, I pull that out of the way, and then go through the next up bead. But yeah, when I get to working quickly with peyote stitch, I occasionally do that, and I just have to pull the needle off and pull that stitch out. All right, so there's rows 1 through 4. And I'm going to go ahead and start another one. Okay, so cutting another 36 inches of thread. And this is size D Nymo. The set that I'm using is Earth Tones. Earth Tones looks like this. It's a really pretty set. I'm using this color so you guys can see it today. But look at this golden one. It's really pretty. I like that. And I'm threading a size 10 hard beading needle. And I'm using the John Bead Miyuki Delicas. Okay, and so the pattern that we're doing is the chevrons in your pattern handout. And the first 2 rows, we're going to build those. We're going to string 10 color A beads. And let's see, last time I had my color A as green. Let's do blue this time. Okay, there's 10. I'm going to bring those to the end. Leave about, 6 or so inches of tail thread that we'll use to do the closure later. And then to begin row 3, pick up 1 color A bead. Want to skip a bead. We're skipping the last bead that was added. And go through the next bead. And pull down, and now pull the working thread and the tail thread apart to tighten it up, and you'll get this shape. And picking up another color bead, skipping a bead, and going through the next one. Pick up another bead, skipping this bead and going through the next. Pulling the working thread and tail thread apart so it just snaps right into place. The next one. Pull it apart. And the last one. So this is the end of row 3 already. And that, in my opinion, is the easiest way to start peyote stitch, is just by pulling those 2 threads apart and getting them to stack. And so to build row 4, you need to pick up 1 bead and go into the up bead, which is the one that's standing on the edge there. Pick up 1 more, go through the next up bead. And the next one here. That's my tail thread getting in the way there. Sorry about that. And the last one. So just a really fun, stitch that It's very versatile. It can be used for so many things. You can make bracelets, earrings, and that's it. So that's starting peyote stitch. And I'm thinking while we're still talking about starting it, I wanted to point out in the handout there is a recap of everything we just did. So you'll be able to see what we've done. We built rows 1 and 2, row 3, and then we would turn and build row 4. Going back the other way. Okay, so patterns. The pattern that we're doing starts with a solid section. Let me actually bring the pictures a little easier to see. Bring the picture over here. It starts with a solid section, and I did this because when you're not sure what size it's going to be when you're making a ring, if you have just a solid section at the beginning, you can have your full pattern show, and this part will just be on the underside of the ring. Sorry, this part right here will be just on the underside. It would be the part that's here, and so you can have your ring not have to line up exactly. But an alternative to that is to have a pattern that's just straight in a row that repeats over and over. And an example of that is here. These are just stripes. All I did was I picked up colors in a row. Now that would be the same all the way around, no matter what size ring you make. So just an idea to throw out there in case you wanted to try that. Another possibility that doesn't really require a pattern is you can make kind of like ombre stripes. And I like to do that kind of in a, a repeat of different colors. Starting again with solid rows. You can see those first 4 rows are just all the same color. So exactly the same as what we did here. And then you'd start adding, in every other row you'd add 1 and 2 and 3 and just kind of follow. In my case, each of my rows is 4, spaced out by 4. And so we're doing really well on time. Do you guys want to see starting one more?
Hi, Danielle. It's Carmi from John Bead.
Hey.
They had a little bit of a difficult time seeing the lighter colored beads.
I started thinking that the moment. Yeah. Why don't I do one more in red?
If you would do it in red, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay. And honestly, this is the only part of peyote stitch that's even remotely challenging, so I think it's worth repeating. Because after this, it's so easy.
You're getting a good response to wanting to do it again, so they will appreciate that.
Great. There we go. And so what I'm doing here is cutting about 36 inches of thread and threading a size 10 hard beading needle. And the pattern we're following is the chevrons. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up 10 color A beads, which represents rows 1 and rows 2 of the pattern. So just really quickly going to string 10 color A's. And bring those down to the end of the strand, leaving a 6-inch tail. This color is gorgeous, by the way. This color. You guys are probably wondering what it is. I'll tell you. It is 602, DB602. All right, so there's 10 beads on the string with a 6-inch tail. I'm going to pick up the first color in row 3 is also color A. I'm picking up the first bead of row 3. And I'm going to skip a bead and go through the next bead. Just that one bead there. Go ahead and pull thread through. And at this point, what I like to do is hold the tail here and pull the working thread. And what you'll see is tighten up into that shape. which is those two bottom beads that's stacked on top of each other, and the thread, working and tail threads are both coming out of the bead above it. And pick up one more bead, skip a bead, and go through the next. And again, pulling working and tail threads apart to make those stack. Pick up one more bead, skip a bead, go through the next one. Pull the working and tail threads apart, and they just snap right into place just like that. There's one more. I actually think the cylinder beads are easier than the round beads to work with in the case of peyote. Usually the cylinder beads are a little more challenging than other stitches, but this, it's meant to be for peyote, I feel like. It was just designed for it. Last one, picking up a bead, skip a bead, and go through the next. All right. And so I wanted to show you guys just getting started in a pattern. We won't have time to work the entire ring, but if you're liking this color, I thought I might just keep working through our pattern for a few more rows so you can see when we start adding in the bead. And so we won't need to add a color bead until row 8, and we just finished row 3. So between rows 4, 5, 6, and 7, all we need to do is just keep adding color A. And I'll just do that really quickly, but while I'm doing that, I was going to tell you guys about creating patterns of your own. You don't always have to sketch them out first, you can, but sometimes it's fun just to color block. So choose colors that you really like seeing next to each other, even just laying the tubes out and playing with what looks good in what order. That's probably where, I'd say 90% of my inspiration for most designs comes from, is laying those seed tubes out next to each other. They're so pretty.
Danielle, I have a question from you from the sidebar.
Sure.
If somebody wanted a ring that wasn't as wide, they would just have a shorter number of beads to start with, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is a ring that starts with 10 beads. So each row adds 5 beads, and it's the equivalent of this one and this one, and I'll show you what that looks like on. So it's going to be about that big. I'm sorry, this one's not closed yet, but about that thick. So that's starting with 10 beads right there.
So if you wanted it thinner, how many beads would you start with? 8, and then
8 would be
4?
Yeah, 8 would be good. So here's what 8 would look like. And here's what starting with 6 would look like. And yeah, you could start with 4, and 4 would be a little tiny band like that. And that would work great too. You can start with any even number you'd like. You can do an odd number too, but that's a different, a little different step. Odd count peyote, you would have to do a turn. And this is one that started with not 10, but 8. And this is just a little stripe one I was working on to complement this one. So you can see the difference in thickness here too. There's 10 versus 8. Actually, I quite like the 8. I think it's a perfect size. And if you want to adapt a pattern down, so say there's a pattern you really like, and you want to use it, but it's got too many rows, you can always remove a row from one from the other side and one from the other side. You can just take some scissors, just cut the pattern and follow with a Post-it. Done that sometimes. That tends to work pretty well. And let's see what other questions does anyone have?
Danielle, this is Carmi again. Do you have enough thread to make the full ring, or will they have to be knotting extra thread?
So that depends on what size ring you're making. If you're making one that's about, I don't know, anything under like say size 7, you're probably fine with 36 inches. If you're making, like say a 9, make 40 inches the amount of thread you cut. But that's a great question. Why don't I show you guys how to add thread?
They would appreciate that.
Yeah, let me switch to that really quick. And we can always talk about patterns using this sample too. So you'll see on this one, the starter rows here, and we started building our pattern here. So my thread started running short. I started with not a great length, so I removed the needle, set that aside for now, and cut a new strand. And you do have to kind of guesstimate the amount you need to cut. Don't sweat it because you can always add more. Adding too much, you could get a knot. So I would say trying to work with more than 30 inches, 36 inches, I mean, or 40 at the max. If you're working with 40, fold it down a lot just to give yourself less potential for a knot. But here, this is my new strand that I just strung. This is my old strand. It's exiting from the last stitch I added. And I want to add this so that it's exiting from the same spot so I can proceed on with the pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just weave around until I get there, changing directions 3 times. You guys will start to hear me say that a lot if you've taken our other classes. It's kind of a theme, but it is the way to lock in thread. So what I'm doing is just going through the beads. I went through that one. I went through this one. It doesn't matter which bead you go through. Just go through a few. This is the 4th bead I'm going through. And this end over here, the tail that I'm leaving here is really short. I'm just going to trim it as soon as I lock my thread in. Okay, so you see how when I pull it still moves? The test is when we pull and it doesn't move anymore, the weaving in has worked. So there's 4 beads that I've gone through. I'm going to turn now and change direction. And in peyote stitch, the bead that's next to it, you can turn and go through that bead, no problem. And you won't even see the thread, see it disappear in there. You can spin the beads and it just tucks right in. So now I'm going to continue down through there. And go down maybe 1 more, and then I'm going to turn again. And turn and go this way. So see, I changed direction just by going into the bead that was, I exited this one and then went back through this one. And now I'm just going to keep going until my thread's exiting from the place where my old working thread is. You'll also notice when you pull, the tail's not moving anymore. So I'll just keep going through this way. All right, and there's where we need to be. First thing I'm going to do is trim this. And the way I like to trim thread is I put tension on it, push down with the scissors and pull up. And kind of spin it, and that tail will disappear into a bead. And now continuing with pattern that I was doing before, I think the next color is right here. So this is one where you would just keep building your rows until you have about 3 or 4 more rows. And then, oops, I missed that bead. Take this thread here and weave it back in, upward into the work. It's not as, it's such a thin thread that if you wanted to, we could weave it in now into the work that's existing. That would be okay to do too, but it's just a habit that I have where I build a few rows and then I string that old working thread and weave it into the work above it, just so I'm not doubling up places where I have multiple passes. It's just, especially if you're working with these tiny beads, but like I said, it's not essential with this thread. It's very light and thin, so you can get away with doing either, whichever way you prefer. So let's see, if we're at 130, I see there's one question here. Ten beads, skip a bead, add one. How do we do the next row? I can go back to that. Let's go back to the one we had here. We had 2 that we were working. This one has row 4 on it. And this one I was just starting to add the 5th row. But essentially what you're doing, I think I'm going to show you on a printed out pattern. There's row 1 and 2. This is rows 1 and 2. And you turn and you're adding rows 3. That's row 3. Then you turn and you add row 4. The bead would go into each space. So you would pick up a bead, turn, and go through this bead. And when you do that, the new bead's going to stack right there. And you'd repeat that here, picking up a bead, go through the next one. You'd see that new bead would stack. Pick up a bead, go through the next one. And keep doing that till you get to the end. When you get to the end, you would have a bead stuck right here. That will allow you to turn and go through it to build the next row. And you'll keep going, and each row will stack on top of the other. And what I've shown here is starting row 8 of the chevron pattern, where you're adding the first new color. And here's turning, add row 9. That would be row 9. I hope that answered the question. Hopefully that helped. And
Danielle,
yep.
This is Carmi again. You're getting a question, how do people size a ring? So
Yes,
someone's making a ring for a child.
Oh, so children's sizes those are a little more challenging than adult sizes, but so to measure someone's finger, what you can do is you can cut a little strip of paper and go ahead and just make a mark on it, wrap it around, make another mark, so you know that their ring size. And then take a ring mandrel and you can wrap that paper on the ring mandrel to get sizes 1, 2, 3. Most children are going to be here between 1 and 3. And you start getting into adult sizes around 5 and up. So I don't know, the best way to measure a ring size, if you're making a ring for someone and you don't know their ring size, keeping it in the range of like 6, 7, 8, 9 for an adult, for a child somewhere in between, because they can always maybe wear it on their, depending on what finger it fits, right? If you can't measure them, that would be my suggestion, to maybe make it in a 1, 2, 3, depending on their age. But yeah, it's best to maybe measure them first. Also, if you don't have a ring mandrel, a lot of fine jewelers on their websites have ring sizing guides you can print out. And so what they usually have, they have a tester. So when you print it, there'll be hey, this is 1 inch, and you measure and make sure that's 1 inch, and then you'll have a pretty good chart. And those have things you can cut out and use to measure. But yeah, what I do when I get to that spot with a ring, so when I'm making it for myself, I just use it. I just measure around how I'm going to wear it. But if I'm making it for a friend, and then I know their ring size, I'll use the mandrel, and I'll measure it around the mandrel. Whatever number it's sitting on top of, that's the size you're making it to. And also you'll want to keep in mind that the difference between making a peyote ring and a small ring is that you're going to want to go up a little bit in size, because a ring that will fit your hand that's thin is going to be smaller than a ring that's thick. The thicker it is, the bigger you're going to want to make it. So you want to bring this one, I've made it to like a, I don't know, maybe like a 6.5. If I hold it this way, you can see I passed the 6, 6.25, 6.5. And so that's how you measure it. And that's a good transition into talking about how to finish them.
Yes.
After you've been stitching for a while, start measuring it and start seeing where it is. When you've reached that point where you think it might be close, you'll want to start thinking about your last rows. With your last rows, they need to be, and I'm going to bring a picture over again so it's really clear to see it. The rows need to be offset from each other like teeth, so they lock. And what that looks like is here. So this is our ring here, and the pieces should interlock to each other. So if you've ended on a row where they're both up beads on the sides, you'll need to stitch on one more row, and it won't make a big difference in sizing. So don't sweat adding an extra row. That won't make it not fit. It will be fine. But you'll have to add a row if you don't have interlocking. And the way to do that, and I'm going to walk you guys through it on 2 rings, but starting with your working thread, you'll want to fold the ring together and take your working thread and go into the bead on the other side that corresponds to it. So you see, I would take this thread and I would go into that bead. And then what you'll do is follow up and go to the other side again. So connecting the up beads from each side of the bead, almost like a zipper. So we'd go from here to here to here to here, just zigzagging up bead to up bead to up bead to up bead. And when you get to the end, when you're exiting from the last up bead, you'll need to turn, go down through the bead on the other side, and then with your tail thread that you had here, turn and go down this way and repeat. Up bead, up bead, up bead. And once you've gone through working thread up, tail thread down, weave into the work with both threads. And that's what I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to start with this one. And these take a while. I pre-made these, and they take a good hour at least. And I'm somewhat fast at peyote stitch at this point, but if you're following a pattern, it's going to take longer because you're paying attention and you're trying to see a couple of rows here and there ahead every time. So with this pattern, I was able to get my pattern to line up at a size that worked for me. And so what I did is I actually went back and I pulled off my first rows, because you remember the first rows are a solid block of just color. And that's just for practicality of starting it and also for making it sizable, easier to size. But you see how I had this little block of color here? I went back and I just pulled off 4 rows so that I could line it up. And that's totally doable, but not required, because as I was saying before, you will not see it. It'll be on the underside of your hand. So it's just another possibility to think about if you're interested, but totally not required. So here's closing the ring. I'm positioning the two sides of the ring together. And now I'm going to go through the up bead that's on this side here. And so what you're going to see happening when I start to pull and tighten is this seam is going to disappear, and it's going to get harder and harder to tell them apart. See, already it's just locking into place so perfectly that it's hard to tell. But I remember this was the last up bead I exited. So this is the one on the other side. Go through that one. And pull. And it locks into place. Go through the next up bead on this side. And don't worry, I've got another sample, so we're going to do this twice. And I know this part is not only tricky, but a little hard to see. And another tip is if it starts to get loose on this end, pull on the thread that's on that side, and it'll tighten it up. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to pull. You see those guys lock? There we go. Okay, I'm going to the next one. And again, I'm being careful not to pierce the thread. And it's surprisingly easy to do. If it happens, no worries, just go ahead and remove the needle. But see here, I'm just going up bead to up bead. Okay, this is the last up bead in that row. And now what you'll see is my thread exiting from one side, and now my tail thread's on the other. I'm going to cross them. Now I'm going to go down through this one. So that's the one my tail's exiting. Pull down. Pull up with the tail. That seam is gone. Can't even tell where it was. So I remember only because the location of the tail tells me that it's these. Otherwise it's invisible. So now I'm just weaving in. I'm weaving in the thread that I used to seal the zipper first. And then I'm going to go back, put a needle on this thread and weave it in. I'll just do that really quick. And another tip for when you're weaving in and changing direction, if you add extra steps, I'll show you when I get to the bottom here. If you add extra turns on the edge, you'll see that thread. And on a ring, I've noticed I see that. I notice it a lot when I'm wearing it. So instead of going straight through this next bead, which is the last one on my edge, and turning and going back up to weave in, I'm going to weave in here. I'm going to turn here so you don't see an extra thickness of thread on the outside layer. And that's like, it's not important, but I've noticed that having an extra thickness here can actually, you can see it when you're wearing it. You'll see the extra loop on the edge. So there, I change direction once. Going up. I'm going to go through two more, change direction one more time, and then I'm going to trim it. Okay, turning here. You can go through two beads sometimes if it lets you, no problem there. Okay, I'm going to go through one more. And I'm going to trim, pulling on the thread, pushing down with the scissors. And there it is. So where this tail thread is exiting, that's where my seam was. And you can't even see it. It's just so fun. Hopefully I can get this off. Good. Yay.
Hi, Danielle. It's Carmi. I'm just
Hey.
checking in. We are great for time.
Awesome.
but you have received two really good questions that I think everybody would benefit from seeing the answer to.
Awesome,
So
yeah.
someone started their project and they got better and better as they went along. So are they able to take off maybe the first 2 or 3 rows that they didn't do as well? Or should they start over?
Yeah, and actually that's one of the things that I love about Peyote stitches. It's very easy to do that. And that's how I made this one join all the way around, as I pulled off my first rows so that I could make my pattern complete. So here's one where we can show you pulling the rows off. Apologies for all the extra threads. I've got a lot of threads going here. I'll get them out of the way. Okay, so these were my first rows, and you'll notice there's this big block of red. And what if I wanted it to just be just like this, just, you know, with only 4 beads in each section? So I want to pull off enough rows that I only have 4 here, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to pull off 5 rows. The best way to do that is to take your needle, use the eye end, not the piercing end, but use the eye end. Go into the last bead you added and pull it off. And sometimes if you put your index finger on that needle and give it a pull, you won't have your beads escaping everywhere. See, if I do that, pull the thread out, got my bead. And I can just put it in my pile and stay organized. So again, I went in with the eye side of the needle, and I'm doing that so I don't stab those threads, and pull. And I'll show you how quickly you can get a couple rows off really fast. Just yeah, no, that's a great question. Was there another question too?
The original question that everyone always has is, how did you get your needle threaded?
Yeah, so this thread, it's great. It's lightweight. It's perfect for this application. It frays instantly. So what I do is I actually just lick it. No joke. It's not the most glamorous, but I totally do that. I did that really quickly earlier. It's awesome that I only have my hands on camera. But yeah, when it's moistened, it'll go right through.
Okay. The other question people had is, you had 2 strings at the end of your finished ring. Would you weave in that second string also?
Yes, absolutely. You'll want to weave in both your working and your tail threads. So on this ring, I had just finished weaving in my working thread. And the next step for me there would be to weave in the tail. And so again, I moistened that just now. And this one has been worked with a lot, so getting that through was a little challenging, but it's one of those things where, you know, oh, and another thought I have with this, these needles, these size 10 beading needles from Michaels, they come with a threader. That threader, it's gonna break if you try it with Wildfire, but with Nymo, I have a hunch it would work for this. So what you would do is you would put that threader through, and then you'd bring your thread through it and pull it, and it brings the thread inside. So you don't even have to worry about threading it. So give that a try. It comes with the needles when you buy them. And I have a hunch with the Nymo that it'll work great. Do you guys want to see me weave this in really quick?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is where I was exiting. And believe it or not, there's a seam here. It's just, it instantly disappears. What I love about Delicas. And earlier I was mentioning that when you do your turns, I'll show you what it looks like right now. But if I do my turn here, and I pull this, it adds a layer of thickness to the side, which isn't really bugging me with this one as much. But with some designs, especially light colored beads, you can see that extra bubble of thread, and it'll bug you when you're wearing it because it'll stand out. So what I like to do is go back through the same bead and then weave in from just one layer in. So I'm exiting from this one. I'm trying to go through this one. And the cool thing about weaving in after you've finished one side is you can hold it like a ring. It makes weaving it in easier. So all I'm doing now is just going through 3 or 4 beads. And I'm going to turn. There's bead 3. I'm going to turn and go through this one. And then peyote stitch the beads that are next to each other. You can watch what happens when I turn and go through this one. It'll just disappear. That thread is going to snap in place. You can roll it. These cylinder beads will roll in this design, and so it's a way you can hide the thread even easier. So I'm going to come up through another one. And go one more. Turn, go down again. You notice I'm not turning on the edge, I'm turning on one end from the edge, so you can't see my turns. And while I'm doing this, a question I get asked a lot is, can I make rings with other beads? Absolutely. Make them with any beads you have that you like. Round beads work great. I like cylinders for beginners because they just have this locking action that I think makes the stitches look cleaner, especially if you're learning. When you're working with round beads and peyote, tension starts to play a role. So that's why cylinder beads are great for beginners. There you go. Okay, so I've just gone to that bottom there, and I'm going to trim it. So I take scissors, pushing down, putting some weight on it, and pull up. There you go. It's gone. You got a great ring.
Danielle, it's Carmi again. You've got many wonderful compliments on the ring itself. We have just a little bit of time left, and people were curious about if you could give them some advice on how to read the pattern.
Yeah,
because reading patterns is really important with seed bead projects.
It is, and it's probably the challenging part. Everything else, I feel like, just works out great, but then pattern reading is hard. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the pattern over. So what you see when you start with a pattern is you'll have a legend, and you'll have your colors. The first thing I always do is decide what's my A, B, C, D color, and I lay them out. I'll pour out color A, color B, color C, and I'll put them in a row. Then I'll go to the word chart. When I start a peyote design, you can follow it with a Post-it, but to start it, because of the way they're stacked, I just find the word chart easier. But again, that's preference. If you really do like the visual study, a note about this: the way the pattern prints out in the word chart, it's going in this direction, from the top to the bottom, going this way. So flip your pattern upside down if you're following it this way. Note that that's row 1, and that's row 2. A total of 10 beads in the case of our pattern. And so what that looks like on the word chart, rows 1 and 2, from the left, 10A. And so they're showing us stringing 10 beads from the left. And that means that you've done this row and this row. And then row 3 is here. And that's where the Post-its come in handy, because then you know you're going to go A, 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 A. But I would recommend for beginners just going with that word chart and using the Post-it note to know which row you've done. So after you finish row 6, move it down 1. And then complete it that way. But if you ever lose your place, there is a trick to finding out where you are. For example, if you lose your Post-it and you have the visual graph, you can use the sides to count. So lay your piece out and you'll know which way it's starting, because you'll have your up bead and your down beads to guide you. There'll be a down bead on one, up bead on one side, and then down bead on the other. So lay it out and then count via the side how many, and that way you can figure out where you are. So I hope that helped. I'm trying to think if there's any other tips I can give you about patterns.
Danielle, that was super helpful. Thank you very much.
Oh, great.
Maybe you just want to turn on your screen so people could see you and say goodbye.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, has it already been an hour? See, peyote, I love peyote. It's relaxing and time goes really fast. And I have a ring, guys. Look at my ring. Yeah. And so I'm happy to answer any other questions if anyone has any others.
Nope,
See,
we have a
so
great class next week too.
I see lots of nice, really, really kind comments. Thank you guys. You made my day. That's great. And yeah, so let's see, any other tips for where we're of course reachable, social media, reaching out. This will be on replay, michaels.com/classes to see a replay of this, any of the steps. And the great part of that is you can pause it and follow along, you know, on the next one.
And we have a great class next week.
Oh yeah, and next week we're doing more. So we're on a peyote stitch roll right now. Next week we're going to make a peyote stitch bracelet with size 8 seed beads, size 8 John bead check glass seed beads, and we're going to embellish the side with the John bead check size 10. So grab some size 8 round and some size 10 rounds, and come back next week, and we're going to have a gorgeous bracelet. All right, and so I just want to say thank you again for following along and being here today with us, making this fun project. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week. And thank you.